making decisions based on your values and what's important for you and how you want your life to look one day, as opposed to making decisions for external validation or because you think it's what you should be doing or it's what your friends are doing. I think it's really important to remember that it's your responsibility to advocate for yourself and to consider your priorities and what you want to achieve, what you want to get out of university. So your priorities might look different to your friends' priorities or your parents' priorities or your siblings' priorities.
G'day and welcome to the Choosing Your Uni podcast. I'm your host, Rob Malicki, coming to you from Garigal Land in Sydney on the east coast of Australia. And I'm very glad today to be joined by somebody on the far side of the country from Western Australia. I have Arlene Janse van Rensburg, and you're going to laugh at my pronunciation. Thank you so much for joining me on the Choosing Your Uni podcast.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me today. And that was a very, very good effort. You were very close. The Afrikaans pronunciation would be Janse van Rensburg, but I think you were pretty much there.
I love it. I think you always got to try, right? People will always nod your head and be like, yep, good on you for giving it a go. When you're out in the world, heading around the place, having a crack at a few words or pronouncing things properly is always a good thing.
100%.
It's awesome to have you here, Arlene. I'm really interested to hear about your experiences studying actuarial and studying at Curtin University. But maybe before we even get there, you actually turned down a number of scholarships in order to choose actuarial at Curtin. Maybe I can just start by asking why, and you tell us that story.
Yeah, it's something that sounds a bit baffling when you hear about it. But when, like many other Year 12 students, I was considering a lot of different universities and a lot of different degrees and not really sure exactly what I wanted to go into. So I did have one of the most prestigious scholarships in Western Australia at the University of Western Australia, the Fogarty Scholarship, which is a total value of $80,000 over up to 8 years to do your undergraduate, master's, postgrad studies. And it also comes with a really great sort of supportive environment and other benefits added to that as well. But the caveat is that UWA does not offer actuarial science, so I would have to study mathematics and economics or some other combination that covers similar content but is not the official degree. The other main university that I considered was Bond University in Queensland, which does offer actuarial science. And although it's a private university, I was really lucky to be able to secure a scholarship for half of the course fees, which was $50,000. So that was also a really big blessing to have that opportunity. But ultimately, at Bond, one of their big selling points is the fact that they have a trimester setup for their degrees. But the upside of that is you can finish a actuarial degree in 2 years instead of 3. And they have smaller class sizes, really focused and personal support from the teaching staff. But the downside is that it makes it really tough to do internships and other extracurriculars between your semesters. So ultimately, at Curtin's really known for their industry connections, and I actually emailed with the actuarial course coordinator at Curtin throughout Year 12 to ask more information about the course, the road to qualifying as an actuary. And I found that at Curtin, there's also pretty small class sizes. The faculty is also really dedicated and committed to helping all the students sort of reach their potential in whichever field they decide to pursue. And I did get the sort of automatic Curtin Excellence Scholarship, which was, I think, a nice little prize after turning down some of the other scholarships, which I didn't really even imagine I would get when I was applying for them. And I think ultimately things have worked out pretty well because I was lucky enough to, once I got to Curtin, I was able to secure a different undergraduate scholarship once I'd already started studying, which is now actually opened a lot of other opportunities for me that I would not have had otherwise.
Oh, we have so much to talk about, so many questions. Maybe since we started on the scholarship stuff, maybe we can just stay there for a moment because that's a huge, overwhelming choice when you're really looking at some serious advantages in picking one place over another. I'm really keen to dig into where your interest in actuarial came from. But before we get to that specific thing about actuarial, tell me about how that kind of felt making that decision around, essentially letting a couple of good scholarship opportunities go, and perhaps the criteria that you used to make that decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really hard to sort of think about it in this way when you're in high school and $80,000 or $50,000 sounds like the most amount of money that you've ever had access to. But I was really trying to think in my mind to make a decision based on long-term benefits, not just short-term gain. And I really wanted to have a well-rounded university experience because I've lived in a lot of places before, moved back and forth from Australia to South Africa a few times. I've actually been in about 13 different schools. So there's been a lot of change in my life, a lot of things that I've experienced so far. And I think one of the main takeaways I've had is it's really good to have a well-rounded and balanced and diverse range of experiences because you never know exactly what you're wanting to do after the thing you're doing right now. So if you're just focused on getting one very specific niche qualification, but you don't have any other diversified experiences, you might not end up liking that. And then you're sort of stuck with all your eggs in one basket. So with the scholarship applications, of course, a really big consideration was the financial support because that would ultimately determine whether, like, how much I would need to work while I was studying, whether I would be living at home or potentially living in student accommodation or independently, things like that. So that was a consideration, but I realized that to me, it's really important to get exposure to different industries, sort of experience different working environments and volunteering opportunities, which is something I'm really passionate about, or have time to play sports in clubs or, join other social activities. And the best place for me to be able to do that was at Curtin University. And one thing that I was really initially disappointed about was that because actuarial is such a sort of rigid course structure and it's an accredited degree, the Actuaries Institute of Australia has to approve everything. You actually don't qualify to do semester-long exchanges or exchange programs overseas. As someone who's lived overseas, and I've actually done an exchange to Germany in high school, which was really a great experience and very much broadened my horizons. That was something that initially made it really hard to make the decision between UWA and Curtin because my course at UWA would have allowed me to do an international exchange. But actually, since coming to Curtin, I've kind of discovered if you just pursue opportunities, try and find other ways of doing things. I actually have been able to do a short-term study tour to Thailand for 2 weeks. So it's not quite the same as a semester-long exchange, but it's still something international. It's still a memory I can make at university, build more connections, and also just grow in that way. I think ultimately it's important to look at universities as a whole, as a sort of nuanced and diverse decision. It's not just the course. I also had to look at all the course structures. So I had to look at exactly what kind of content we'd be covering, reviews from students who'd done units in the past. And I think one other thing that was really important to me is I wanted to have a specific official accredited qualification at the end of the day. I think coming from South Africa, that's something that's pushed quite a lot in the culture over there. Like, it's good to be a doctor or a chartered accountant or an actuary or an engineer, like something that's an official title. And I think I realized that if I was going to UWA, I would be studying maybe maths and economics in a double degree and doing the BPhil program there, which also sounded really interesting. But ultimately, I would just have a bunch of different skills that I couldn't prove were actually on par with what an actuarial qualification would be. Whereas at Curtin, if I was studying actuarial science, I could progress towards actually qualifying as an actuary and then having the official, like, professional backup to be able to apply for those kinds of roles and do that kind of work.
Why was that important to you, out of curiosity?
I think in South Africa that I think it's quite challenging to find graduate jobs or jobs in general. So that's kind of drilled into students from primary school is like it's really important to do very well academically and kind of be near the top of your class or excel, because another thing, like, the political landscape there in recent years has been a little bit less secure. So a lot of people are trying to think of backup plans perhaps outside of the country, and something like actuarial is actually recognized over the world, whereas even being a doctor in South Africa, you can't work in different countries, or at least not in Australia. So that was also something that when I was thinking about what I wanted to study while still living there, I was like, oh, I want to have the option to be able to live anywhere in the world if I needed to or if I wanted to.
Love it. All right. So how did you then stumble into actuarial studies? because it's not something that, as you said earlier, a lot of people have never heard of it before, and yet it's oh wow, like what a fantastic field of study, right? So how did you first discover it and decide that, oh yeah, this is actually what I want to do?
I like to tell people that I wanted to be an actuary since I was about 11 or 12 years old. And although that might sound like a bit of an exaggeration, I think there is some truth to it as well. Because as I said, in South Africa, like actuary, it's something that you see older students in high school, like the really smart students who you'd sort of look up to and want to model their work ethic or their hard work. You see them going to study actuarial science. Or I knew from quite a young age that medicine was not for me. I'm too squeamish for that, and I think my sister's actually doing midwifery, so clearly it does not run in the family. But that's the great thing, like everyone has different skills and interests. So I think I recognized pretty early on that I like working with numbers, I like solving complex problems, but I don't love computer programming that much either. Like I like using it as a tool to get insights into data or to help me do complex calculations more quickly or efficiently, but I don't love like creating computer programs. And I've done a unit in that at Curtin, and although it was interesting, I think it just helped me confirm that I don't actually want to go into that. So we moved back to Australia when I was at the start of year 11, just before COVID, and the whole world was going a little bit crazy and it was a little bit uncertain. So, like most year 12 or year 11 students, I was sort of Googling career prospects. I was new to the ATAR system, so I was kind of looking at which degrees had higher ATAR requirements as a bit of a metric to see which ones were considered harder to get into. Or I think like the assurance that you are likely to get a job afterwards is also something good to consider. And I think actuaries have a 0% unemployment rate. Like, I knew that I'd be able to get a job, whether that's a job that I wanted or not. Like getting any job, I think that's a good reassurance to have. So I did some research. I found that there are only a couple universities in Australia that offer actuarial science, with Curtin being the only one here in Western Australia. And as I said before, I was emailing the course coordinator at Curtin. I think also the way in which she responded to this random year 12 emailing her, that's really a testament to the kind of faculty that teaches actuarial at Curtin. Very, very experienced, very much committed to helping students grow, and it's complex content that we're covering. So the faculty kind of makes or breaks it. I don't think we have very high dropout sort of numbers. There is actually a number of medical students that drop out after 1 or 2 years and then move over to actuarial if they discover they also prefer the numbers side of life. Yeah, I would say my sort of personal interactions with, her name is Joanne Morgan. She's the sort of lead actuary for the Curtin program. And I've worked quite closely with her because I was president of the Student Actuarial Society this past year. So, and she also supervised the study trip that I went on to Thailand. I think Joanne definitely does contribute greatly to my positive experience of the program and many other students as well.
As you mentioned, Arlene, a number of actuarial programs in Australia. So just for simplicity, those people listening along to this, Australian National Uni and Bond both teach actuarial. Curtin, of course, which is where you are now. Macquarie University, which I think may have been the first actuarial program in Australia. Certainly very high reputation over in Sydney. Monash and Melbourne in Victoria, and as well as the University of New South Wales. So that's where the options are for people. Maybe you can give us a little insight, Arlene, into maybe not so much day in the life, but what does studying actuarial actually look like? Who would this really suit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, with actuarial, I'll sort of give a little overview of what the kinds of classes are like, because that's something that you don't really find online. So, typically, like any university degree, you do 4 units per semester, and each unit that you do usually has 2 hours of lectures and then 1 hour as a tutorial and 1 hour as a workshop or a computer lab. And the workshop is typically done either in Excel, or the computer lab would be done in RStudio, which is a kind of statistical programming language. Actuarial units, there are 2 types of units. There are sort of exemption units, as we call them, and non-exemption units. So the whole goal of doing actuarial at a university that is accredited to offer actuarial science is to gain exemptions from the exams that you would need to do to become an actuary. So I think
Ah,
there are there are different levels of actuary. There's sort of an associate actuary, a fellow, and then you can specialize. Fellow is sort of the highest professional qualification, but you can specialize in specific fields. So over my 3-year undergraduate degree, I can get exemptions from 6 of the actuarial exams. And then when I do honors next year, I can get 2 more exemptions. And I believe after honors, you have to do all the further exams and exemptions, or just the exams, through the institute directly. So to give you an idea, at Curtin, usually 3 or 4 Curtin exemption units together give you 1 exemption. And then there are specific requirements for how well you need to do in those units. I think you need a minimum of 65% per unit, but an average of 73% across all the units that go towards a specific exemption.
Oh, yeah.
And then after your degree, if you have achieved all of those exemption requirements, then the nominated actuary of the course, in this case, our course coordinator, Joanne Morgan, she then applies for the exemptions from the Actuarial Institute of Australia on your behalf. And then you can get exemptions from all 6 or some of the 6 units of exams that the exemptions go towards. And one thing to keep in mind is because you can do these exams directly through the institute, if you don't meet the exemption requirement at an accredited university, but you still pass the unit, you can't actually retake the unit to get a better mark. So if you got really good marks in 3 of the 4 units, and in the 4th one you got 60% instead of 65, then you would have to do the whole exam through the institute. You can't just redo that 1 unit.
Wow, that's high stakes, isn't it? Yeah.
That's something to keep in mind.
Can I just dive sideways for a moment and just talk briefly about accredited degrees for those people listening along who might not be familiar with that language? Accredited degrees are programs that are specifically endorsed, overseen, if you like, by professional bodies in Australia. So, for example, engineers might be overseen by Engineers Australia. The health sciences degrees, anything that's medical, nursing, dental, allied health, are all regulated by the Australian government and by accreditation bodies. And so here where we're talking about actuarial studies, actuarial science being an accredited program, what we're talking about is that being monitored, if you like, by the Professional Association of Actuaries in Australia. What that means is that there's a guaranteed level, if you like, for people who are working in that profession that they must have achieved to become an accredited professional. And in order to become an accredited professional, you need to complete an accredited degree. That's the basics. Sorry to jump in on you, Arlene. I just find that that's one of those things that once you've been working in higher ed, or if you're studying one of those degrees, it's really obvious. But otherwise, it's like mysterious language. So hopefully that's helpful for somebody out there wondering whether or not that's for them. Talk about types of students. You did say we were going to go there, so let's talk about the sort of types of students that this might suit, that actuarial might suit.
Of course, I'll start with describing myself. I'm someone who really does like maths. I enjoy solving problems. I enjoy learning about more efficient ways of calculating things, or even just learning how to create the formula to calculate something. Because I think in school, that's something that we're not really exposed to as much. Like, you always sort of get a question or a word problem and you have to remember which formula to use in order to solve that. Whereas in actuarial, by the time you get to your 3rd year, you're actually creating formulas from scratch. Like, the really exciting thing is knowing how to do that. Like, you know how to interpret really complex situations and then translate that into a way that allows you to calculate expected values, or the risks associated with certain things, how much you should be setting aside to meet certain investment goals, or things like that. I think I find that really interesting. So personally, I do like maths a lot. However, I'm not someone who likes doing pages and pages of proofs for no reason, or someone who, I like when the results are something a little bit more tangible. That's something that when I was doing maths methods and math specialist in high school, I actually didn't like math specialist that much, because it was a lot of imaginary numbers and kind of proofs. And I was actually finding it really hard to answer those kinds of questions, because it was maths that we'd never done before in the rest of my school career. So that actually made me wonder if I'm actually cut out to be an actuary in the first place, because the whole sort of stereotype about actuaries is that we just do maths all the time. But the great thing about actuarial science, and what I think a lot of students don't realize, is it's actually a very diverse range of ways to apply those mathematical skills. So, a very large proportion of the undergraduate degree involves statistics. So, a lot of it is sort of pure statistics theory. So, we're learning about different kinds of distributions. If you're in high school, you might remember the normal distribution or the Bernoulli distribution. So, these are kind of different ways of describing the probability of something happening or trying to model events in real life. That's something, when I was thinking about my courses that I've done in high school, I really enjoyed the probability section of things. And I also really like humanities. So I did economics and modern history and accounting in high school as well. And I thought, I really want to do something that has some sort of business or financial application. And actuarial does have that. So one of the exemptions that we try to work towards, or some of the units that we do, include actuarial economics or finance or business analytics. So although the vast majority is mathematical and statistics focused, there's also that financial and economic sort of flavor that's mixed in as well, which I think makes it a little bit more interesting to me. And we learn how to specifically apply the things that we cover in an insurance context or in a portfolio management context or in a reinsurance context or, in any type of industry at all. And like while I've been studying, I'm currently doing my fourth internship over the course of my studies. And I've done all my internships in completely different industries because I really just wanted to sort of see how my skills could be applied in the different industries. And from a student's perspective, it's great to sort of see where your skills can be applied. But also from an employer's perspective, the fact that I was able to pitch myself to a mining company and an investment bank and a quantitative trading firm and an astronomical research facility, like that kind of shows how transferable the skills really are and how diverse your options are after you graduate. Even though it's a super niche degree, the level of skills that you're learning, even if we mostly learn it in an insurance context, like the caliber of skills that you're learning and the respect and acknowledgement of the level that we must reach to actually get the accreditation, as you mentioned, like that makes you really, really in high demand to employers compared to someone who's just done, not just, but someone who did a more general maths degree or an economics degree who might similar content, but they don't have that sort of stamp of approval from a big professional body that has the reputation of producing quality candidates for companies.
It sounds to me, if I'm hearing right, what I've heard you say is that it seems like it really suits somebody that does love maths, loves those sort of problem-solving skills and the like, but also who perhaps really loves the idea of it being a real-world application where you can sort of take those numbers, you can apply them in real-world contexts to real-world challenges that are out there that need to be solved.
Definitely. And I also think it suits someone who has a little bit of perseverance because when you first start, it's a little bit of a shock because, like math specialist in high school, it's something that you've never done before. But the way in which the course is designed and the order of units, if you are putting in the time and participating in class and attending your classes, because at university you don't have to attend classes, but I would highly recommend that you do, I think that it definitely sets you up for success. And everyone within the faculty or your peers and class, everyone is very academically motivated and wants to work hard. I think that's another thing that drew me to the degree. It was being surrounded by like-minded students because maybe really liking maths or being good at those sorts of subjects in high school isn't the most popular choice necessarily. Maybe it's something that can alienate you a little bit from most of the other students in your school. But I think once you get to university and you're studying a degree like actuarial science, it's actually so refreshing being surrounded by students that also chose to study that degree. And if there's a group assignment, no one's thinking like, oh, I don't want to do this whole assignment by myself. I find myself having to act very quickly. Otherwise, the other students will get started without me almost. Like everyone's so enthusiastic to learn and that you can trust the other students to do their work well, which I just think is pretty refreshing. I think that's also quite nice, just being surrounded by like-minded students who also enjoy the similar kinds of topics that you do.
I love that. The idea of it being a fairly close-knit cohort, that's a real advantage, because sometimes you go into a degree in university or in first year with 500, 1,000, other students, that can be quite overwhelming. So being in a close-knit cohort is a real advantage in many ways. I just love the idea of group work actually working well.
Yeah.
The only degree area in all of Australian higher education where students all equally pitch in on group work. Here's a tip for young players. If you want to go and look up some funny uni content, go to TikTok or Instagram and look up like group work examples, and you'll find many. A little clarification that people might have heard you say this a couple of times, which is maths specialist. Just to clarify, for those people who are on the East Coast, we're simply talking about extension mathematics for high school. It's called different things. Governments will probably change the name of it again. So just think you're talking about the really specialist, there you go, levels of mathematics in high school. That's what Arlene's been talking about. What I'd love to pick your brain on, and you mentioned internships. And in fact, several times throughout the conversation, you've talked about the importance of extracurricular. I'd love to hear about your experiences, the other things that you've been involved with. But before we get there, like, why did that become apparent to you? How did it become apparent to you that was an important thing?
I think when I was younger, I was very, very academically focused. Like I was quite competitive. In South Africa, we do exams from year 4 onwards, and they actually publish ranks of all the students after all the exams. So it's kind of became very much a way of measuring my kind of academic worth based on how well I performed on these academic ranking lists. And then in year 10 in South Africa is when you sort of choose your subjects that you'll do, whereas in Australia, usually it's in year 11. And I really enjoyed doing German. In year 10, I actually did not take German because I realized I couldn't get like 100% in a language. So I made a decision to not do German and instead do a different subject that I could perform better in academically. That is my biggest academic regret that I have ever made, because at the end of year 10, I actually ended up going on an exchange to Germany, and I was there for a month, and it was a great experience to experience another culture. My host family was lovely. But I still think to this day, if I had just taken German for the whole year before going, I probably would have been fluent in German by now. I did do German for 2 years before that, but I lacked the fundamental foundation to like really be able to make the most of the German exchange. And that's something I sort of had to tell myself, like, you can't change the past, but this can help inform how you make decisions in the future. So from that time onwards, I always made it such a priority to try and do as many things as possible if I'm interested in those things, not just making decisions based on how well I can perform or which rank I can achieve, or these short-term metrics that actually don't benefit you in the long run, and you're just prohibiting yourself from becoming a more well-rounded individual. And in first year, I attended a lot of careers events or networking events at different companies in Perth, and the common theme that all the recruiters were saying is, yes, your academic performance is important, but it's not the be all and end all. In fact, it's really important to have good communication skills, teamwork skills, conflict resolution. And it's all good and well to have those skills, but if you can't articulate and give examples of where you have applied those skills before, like the company can't just take your word for it. Like you need some sort of proof. So I think if you don't want to think of doing extracurriculars or you don't really care about doing volunteering, think of it as collecting proof that you have the skills that employers want you to have. You are collecting tangible examples of times, and keep that on the back of your head when you're doing any sort of activity at uni. One tip that I have is I keep sort of a list of all the things that I've done, and as I'm doing them, I kind of write down examples of things that happen there, because in interviews, often they'll ask you, oh, talk about a time when you worked as a team, or talk about a time where you were a leader, or where you disagreed with someone in a position of power, or something like that. And it's really good to have some examples in your back pocket. Plus, I think volunteering or doing other types of extracurriculars is good for you personally. But if you don't care about doing it personally, think of the benefits it will have for your career one day.
Yeah, I love the kind of description of like collecting XP almost, like ding 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 ding, and like the counter at the top of your video game is going up or something like that as you're collecting these experiences. That's very true. Actually, and just as you're talking, I've just pulled up your LinkedIn profile because I'm like, it sounds like you're probably going to have a pretty good LinkedIn profile.
I will say, LinkedIn, that is my biggest tip. I got it in first year, and I would spend weeks going on other people's profiles, getting ideas of how to make mine look better. So I'm pretty of my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, you play a strong. I mean, for anyone, full stop. But even especially being a uni student, most uni students don't even think about LinkedIn till the end. You're playing a strong game here.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
wow, awesome. Yeah, good on you. Well, it counts, right? Like I really believe the sooner you do this, the sooner it just puts it in the back of your mind. Just as you say that you can start to add these things in a meaningful way to a portfolio. And I think I'll do a whole episode on LinkedIn one day because it's just such a good game. And what I love about your profile, I'm looking here, you got a really nice shot of you, looks like at a networking function. You got a name badge on there. You got this beautiful cityscape of Perth, which sort of geolocalizes you, which is really smart. 500 plus connections, which is fantastic. Oh, it looks like we've got a couple of, they're going to be New Colombo plan connections, I reckon, people in common.
Yeah.
And I can see, yeah, you've got some posts up there, which is good, and all of your different experiences in the different societies, internships, stuff like that. I can tell you, if I were a potential employer, I'm coming to your profile, I'm like, this is somebody I want to interview straight away. So if you're listening along, get on LinkedIn and start getting those experiences up there too.
And I also think, like, there's a lot of companies where they run 1 or 2 day programs, especially for first year students, which is something you can put on your LinkedIn. I've since then taken a lot of these down as I've done longer term internships or other work experience. But if you're trying to just get something to put on your LinkedIn, there's EY does the Game Changers program or the Career Compass program. Deloitte does, I think they call it Deloitte and Me now. It used to be the Deloitte Insider program. KPMG does the Foundations program. I actually, in first year, did a couple programs in Sydney where the companies flew me over to Sydney to attend participate in these programs, which I think was partially because I went to the effort of applying and had a good resume and interviewed well with them, but also because of what they know about the actuarial course. Because as a first year, you don't have that much in terms of your academic transcript at university to support your claims of being student worth investing in. So they also look at what you're actually studying and like the extracurriculars you've already participated in, because that's something that you can do without being accepted by a company. You can just sign up for a club or sign up for volunteering.
You're going to have a job before you finish uni, aren't you?
I hope so. That's the idea of doing internships. Like you sort of try something out and see if you like it or not. Because I think the other great thing about an internship is there's no long-term commitment. Like you don't have to quit. It's a set fixed term in which you work for a company, and even if you end up not liking it, at least that's information that you get out of it. At least now you know. It's kind of like dating. You sort of identify qualities you like and don't like, and then until you find one that's a good fit for you.
Nice. Love that. Professional dating. There we go.
Exactly.
Give us a tip for those people listening along who may have never done an internship, never even sort of thought about how to go and look for one. How do you approach that process of trying to find an internship and then actually nailing one?
That's a really good question. And I've actually had students in lower years at Actuarial reach out to me, and I've had coffee catch-ups with them and given them some tips. So that's actually a really good piece of advice, is find someone older than you who has done internships, who is perhaps studying the same degree as you. And LinkedIn is a really good place to find someone like that. I think sending someone a message on LinkedIn is usually very well received. Even applying for scholarships, I always try and find someone who has been successful in securing that scholarship and ask them. I just send a message like, hello, my name is Arlene. I'm applying for this scholarship. Are you available to answer a few questions? And usually they are I know I love answering questions or helping other students if it's something that I'm able to give advice on. My approach was typically very methodical. So at the start of first year, I knew that that's something that I wanted to prioritize. I wanted to get some good work experience, exposure to different industries. So I made a list. I made a list of all the companies that I could find in Western Australia and Australia that had anything to do with the actuarial profession. So on the Actuaries Institute website, they actually have a list of companies that employ actuaries. We also have a website at Curtin for the Student Actuarial Society where we have a careers page with sort of ideas of opportunities students can apply for. But it's actually relevant to data science, finance, economics students as well because of the way that our degree combines these skills. So then I went on all of these companies' websites and I signed up to their careers email list. So then whenever they publish, we're running this program, sign up here, I always signed up. I tried to make it work. My approach was sort of to say yes and figure out how I'm going to do it later. So I did have some pretty busy weeks while I was in first year, but I think that it was worth it in the long run. And It's also really important to refine your resume and make sure that it's not too long and an accurate representation of who you want the company to view you as. So, if you want to highlight your leadership experience, don't put it at the bottom of the second page. Try and, keep it concise. Remember that most recruiters are looking at it for maybe 5 or 6 seconds and then deciding if it's worth reading more. There's a lot of templates available. The one that I use is called Jake's Resume on a program called Latex, which takes some time to figure out how to use, but it's basically just an online text editor and it makes it look really professional. And I think that also helps to visually make you seem like a more capable candidate. And yeah, of course, just if you have an interview at a company, I would encourage you to go on that company's LinkedIn page and you can see alumni from your university who potentially work there, or from your degree, if there's someone from your degree who works there, even better, and message them. Ask them, like, do you have any advice for the interview? Like, are you able to be my reference? Like, sometimes if you get a referral to a company, that allows you to bypass some of the initial screenings. Casting your net wide and thinking of any interview experience as good experience, because and getting comfortable with rejection. I think that's something that I did not like at all. Like, sometimes you will get rejected, and just sort of taking it, like letting it roll off of you like water from a duck's back, because it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It might just mean that the company's not even running the position anymore. So just sort of backing yourself and having the confidence and preparing well for the interview.
Nice. I love it. Hey, since you've mentioned the rejection thing, I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in on that, because it's like, I hate that too. Everyone hates being rejected. It's a terrible feeling. But the main thing is like to be just kind of keep getting up and going back and doing more. And that's how you end up becoming successful, is just by continuing to ask and knock on doors and have conversations. And to me, the thing that really shifted and made that easier for me was just approaching everything with pure curiosity and essentially like asking for advice. So if you're going in there and really what you want is an internship, it may be like not even talking about an internship when you're going and reaching out to a company or individuals, but going in there with curiosity, reaching out to people saying, hey, look, I want to learn about, business X, whatever, industry X. This is what I'm curious to, maybe I want to work in it. And I'm reaching out to you for advice. I really want some advice on how I can learn more. What are the things I need to know? And almost nobody will say no to you. I get probably a dozen of these every couple of weeks via LinkedIn, and I love it. Like, I'll always never say no to that. Just people coming and asking for advice and my opinion on this, that, or the other. Why? Makes me feel good. Make me feel like I'm valuable. So do the same. If you approach these things just with pure curiosity, it's not as daunting, because if somebody tells you something and it doesn't seem to line up with what you're interested in, then you go like, oh, well, no big deal. So curiosity to me is the key.
And I also think on LinkedIn, you can use the posts as a way to build your personal brand. So I don't post as much at the moment anymore, but as you mentioned earlier, I have over 500 connections. And I would say that the majority of those are people I've met in real life. And it's surprisingly easier to build up connections. Initially you're going to be the one reaching out to everyone else, like sending a connect request. But eventually there are people, graduating from your high school who make a LinkedIn account, you get recommended to them, and they request to connect with you. And I think recruiters are very happy to connect with students in many industries. And then if you make a post about a program that you've done, or a certificate that you've received, or maybe a certificate of distinction at your university, or saying, I'm delighted to be part of this club for the next year, excited to do XYZ, then these recruiters will sort of see your name popping up on their feed. And that also just makes you, it's another way to collect evidence. It also shows that you're someone who takes the initiative, does things that are important to them, and is like actively trying to build a personal brand.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Maybe when I do that episode on LinkedIn, I'll come back to you, and maybe you could come and guest, be part of a panel or something like that on how to play a strong LinkedIn game when we're at uni.
Well, I would love that. That would be great.
Yeah, because we've got limited time here, right? So we've talked a lot about actuarial, a bit about your journey and stuff like that. So there's so much stuff that I'd love to explore more on the extracurricular side of things, but I might just park that for now, and we come back to that in another conversation. But I'd love to know about your experience at Curtin itself. What have been some of the things that maybe surprised you or delighted you about your experience at Curtin?
I've really loved being at Curtin. I really love the campus. When I was in first year, I was actually living on campus for the first couple of months, because in South Africa, everyone lives on campus. So I just really wanted that experience. All of my friends who are graduating high school over there are going to move into student accommodation and all live next door to each other. And so for the first semester of first year, I actually also lived in the student accommodation at Curtin, the new St. Catherine's College, which was also really fun. It was a great way to meet a lot of people. And I was surprised by how few people in Australia live in college for fun. It's more just international or regional students, but it was still a really great experience regardless. I think what really surprised me was how much being part of a student society or a club or a social sport team or some sort of group like that can really enhance your university experience. Because unlike high school, like no one is forcing you to do anything, or no one is actively following up on whether you attend classes or whether you're doing extracurricular activities. So it's really up to you to take the initiative to try those things. And, you never know who you might meet, where you might make friends, which experiences you might enjoy. So I think sort of the whole extracurricular side of Curtin surprised me, as well as how great their industry connections are. There are so many work integrated learning experiences where you can do an internship sort of to get credit towards a unit. So they have a lot of connections with industry. Also, how many international opportunities there were, especially after we're coming out of COVID. Yeah, I think I really, really enjoyed the degree itself. I was quite worried initially that it was going to be too difficult or too mathsy or too specialized, but I'm really enjoying it so far. And I think just going to uni and trying your best, and if you want to change degrees, change it to something else if you want to. Bottom line, I think I've really enjoyed the variety of opportunities at Curtin and how much support there is if you want to pursue something.
Awesome. Give me a secret tip. Like if you had to give a tip that kind of not really many people know about, or it's not really widely talked about, something you've discovered there and you're just like, the number one place is you got to study in this, this little nook in the library. I don't know what it is, but hit me with something that you really love, a little secret thing that you found.
I really love the new library. They've renovated it recently. So, level 6 on the library is my personal favorite spot to study. And if you sort of exit the elevators and then turn to your right, there's a kind of breakout area where you can study. And it has a view of the tops of the trees. And that's really pretty to me. So, that's my favorite little study spot that I would recommend to anyone. Other tips? Oh, actually, this one is like hot tip. So a big university thing that people don't love is paying for parking. And at UWA, parking is a bit of a nightmare. I think they've stopped doing this parking permits and it's just $2 a day for everyone. But now it means there's no parking spots available. At Curtin, we still have parking zones and paid parking areas. But there is a free parking area that very few people know about. It does involve a little bit of walking, but I think it's a hot tip. So the current internship that I'm doing, and it's just across the road from Canon, and they have these parallel parking, street parking areas, which are free. So it's often empty. It's not further than the green parking at the cheapest area of parking at some areas of Curtin. So I was given this knowledge by a student who graduated last year, and I feel I would like to impart it on your listeners.
It's very generous because nothing is more precious on a university campus than a free park. That's straight one. I speak with authority. It almost doesn't exist. I love it. All right. Arlene, you mentioned just a moment ago on-campus living. It's interesting, right? Like for the longest time, I was like very anti on-campus living. And, my mind sort of shifted a few years ago because I started hearing really positive things from different institutions. But of course, experiences vary. What's your experience, living on campus, like the good and the bad?
Of course. So for the first 6 months of my first year, I actually did live on campus at Curtin. So it was a little bit of a unique situation because it was a brand new college that had just opened. My sister was in college at UWA in the Thomas More College for 2 years, and she absolutely loved it, really recommended it. I did a sleepover at the St. Catherine's College at UWA that they hosted for Year 12s, also really had a great time. But I think what made it a little bit challenging in the first year of the college at Curtin was it didn't quite have that established culture of college yet. The residential advisors had only been there for maybe 1 or 2 weeks longer than the rest of us. We were the first people living in those rooms. If a shower wasn't working, we're the one who figured it out. If there's any sort of technical issues, we're sort of the guinea pigs to test out the rooms. But the flip side of that is all the rooms were brand new. The beds were brand new. We were the first ones sleeping on them. The desks were brand new. It was a very modern style as well. I think it was modeled after the sort of colleges over east in Sydney and Melbourne, the same sort of layouts. So I think a big positive is, of course, healthy meals. And, as first years, or you would typically not get a room with a kitchen. I was very lucky to get one because it was a brand new college. But typically, you'd have to do all your meals in the dining hall. And that's a really good way to meet people, spend more time around other students. I had a reduced meal plan because I had a kitchen, which in hindsight, I think might have made it more challenging to connect with other students because it's a bit daunting just going to the dining hall if you don't really know anyone. Also, in my first week of being at college, I got COVID and I had to be in my room by myself for the first week of being at college, which I also just think maybe set things off a little bit on a sour note because that first week is so important to build relationships and connections. And I think just being in a small room by myself and being really sick was really challenging. The college was very supportive. I had medication delivered by a pharmacy, which they brought to me, and they delivered meals to my room. But again, it was sort of the first time I had residents with COVID, so they don't really exactly know what the procedure should be. But they really did. They checked in on me, made sure I was doing okay. So from their side, I think they were very supportive. But personally, I think being alone in that room by myself for a week and being sick wasn't the best way to start my university experience. But okay, back to some of the good things. College often has a lot of student groups, so they have a running club or they have a video games club or they have a beaches club that sort of goes to a beach every weekend. And they have a lot of different clubs like that now, which my friends that still live there really take advantage of. But back when I started, a lot of these things were first getting implemented, so it wasn't as regular or as established. We had formal hall, which was something that happened, I think, every 2 weeks, where you had to wear sort of a Harry Potter black gown, and then you had sort of like a formal meal, everyone in college together. They'd usually have a guest speaker, everyone dressed formally, which I just think it's kind of nice having like sort of formal experiences together. It sort of reminds of the colleges in the UK where they do sort of the more formal college proceedings. It's also nice to, have everyone has a designated residential advisor that they can go to if they need help with something. I think for international students especially, a college is a great resource to settle into a new country, help with international student issues with the university. St. Catherine's College at Curtin actually offers free tutoring for students that live there. So for a lot of my units, I could say I'm struggling with linear algebra or I'm having trouble with my actuarial practices unit, and they would go and find a student who has done the unit before and pay that student to tutor you. And if they can't find someone within the college, they go elsewhere and outsource someone for you. So I think that's really nice. Like they do want their students to perform well academically as well as have a social and kind of extracurricular life as well, which is not something that a lot of other colleges do to my knowledge. So that's a really good benefit of St. Catherine's. And also the first year that I lived there, the accommodation fees were half price because they were trying to kind of get the college started. So that was also on the positive, like a less of a financial burden to stay there. But on the flip side, we had a lot of postgraduate students who had kind of been living in apartments and independently, who then came and lived in college because it was more financially feasible. And I think that took away a little bit from the college culture because it wasn't just undergraduate students and first years all kind of coming to the uni together. It's people who have furniture like in storage and are there doing a PhD, not necessarily interested in chatting with all the younger students.
Different audience for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so what was the net sum of that? Any other negatives? Did you stay in college or did you move out?
I decided to move out of college after 6 months because I think this also made me really glad that I chose Curtin University as opposed to an interstate university because I found it really challenging being away from my family. As I mentioned before, I have moved a lot. I did a 1 month exchange in Germany when I was 15 years old. I've been in a lot of different schools, but I think in that whole process, I've come to really value and rely on my family's support because they've sort of been the one constant in my life. So being in college, that was much more challenging than I was anticipating. I was coming home almost every weekend, sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a time. And I think that combined with other challenges of perhaps isolating myself, perhaps the college not having an established culture, it was kind of the perfect storm of circumstances that helped me to realize that it was better for me to be back at home. And luckily, I was at a local university, so I was still able to attend the same university. And the college was very understanding. They were able to finish my contract early and very supportive, wished me very well.
You know what I love about that, Arlene, is like you're adjusting your course based on what's going on in the real world. It's not like you've sort of set yourself on some goal off in the future and you're not being compromising on it, but you're also looking at what's coming up in terms of opportunities and discomforts and things, and you're adapting as you go. And so I've got a lot of respect for that because it shows a lot of maturity, but also courage. Like it's actually courageous to course adjust when things aren't going well or aren't going as you expected. So hats off to you. Maybe to wrap us up, this has been a really nice conversation. I really enjoyed it. And you've talked a little bit about traveling overseas. You've done your exchange in Germany. Phenomenal. You've also talked about taking an international study experience as part of your degree. That was the new Colombo plan. So let's finish off by talking about this opportunity to get funded, get money to go and have an international study experience somewhere Indo-Pacific region. Tell me about your NCP experience.
The New Colombo plan was really amazing. I had such an incredible time. When I started studying, I sort of came to terms with the fact that I would not be able to do a semester exchange, and I sort of decided to just try and do as many other extracurriculars to make up for that. So at the end of my first year, I got an email, and the email said that Curtin had applied for funding with the New Colombo plan and was organizing an actuarial study tour to Mahidol University in Bangkok the following year before the start of semester, which meant that we were able to do it without affecting the other accredited units we were taking. And I think what I really loved about it is, first of all, it's a group study trip. So I was able to build really great friendships with other students in my cohort and also in cohorts above me. So I made some of my closest university friends on that study trip. And really, I think being in a different country, perhaps stressful situations, fun situations, it's a really great way to have shared experiences and build friendships. So we went to Thailand for 2 weeks. We had a project that we were doing at the university. We met a lot of the students at Mahidol University. And it's unique in the sense that there's actually an ongoing arrangement between Curtin and Mahidol University where about 10 to 15 Mahidol students come to Curtin in the middle of second year to finish the rest of their degree at Curtin University. So I was actually able to meet a lot of those students before they came to Curtin 6 months later, which was really great. And we were then able to show them around Perth, welcome them, know their faces before they joined us in class. And I think one of my favorite things that we did in Thailand was we went on a weekend trip to Hua Hin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a little coastal town about 2 or 3 hours from Bangkok. And while we were there, we went on like a river cruise, we went to the floating markets, we planted some trees, we went to a forest. It was the perfect combination of academic development and also social and cultural experiences and, doing touristy things as well. Mahidol University organized a lot of the activities for us as well, which was really great. And Curtin, did all the heavy lifting with admin and flight bookings and hotel bookings and all of that. And it was all funded by the New Colombo plan, which I think is really incredible because that's, I guess, the trade-off as a university student. You have the most free time that you'll have in your adult life, but the least amount of money. So something like this, I think there's no reason really that I could think of not to go. Also, my favorite part of the whole trip was visiting the Australian embassy in Thailand and meeting the foreign ambassador for Australia. Like, we did cooking classes. It was just, there was so many fun things that we did, and I would definitely consider it a highlight of my university experience. And then when I returned to Australia, I actually was the New Colombo Plan ambassador for Curtin the following year. So that was another really great opportunity to kind of have another leadership position, collaborate with the Curtin Go Global team, collaborate with other ambassadors from different universities, and just promote the program. And a lot of the current actuarial students are getting ready to go to Thailand in a few months. So I think it's been really good so far.
Amazing. Funny little side note, I helped to design the New Combo Plan back in 2013.
Really? Well, you did a great job. I think that NCP is such a great initiative and definitely has very tangible results. Like, I think spending time in a different country is the best way to build connections to the industries there, to the people there. So
awesome. Game-changing program for young people and for Australia in general. I'll just send you a connection request, Arlene. So if you want to read the story about the phone call I got from Julie Bishop, you'll find it on my LinkedIn profile.
Oh, fantastic. I will accept that as soon as we finish talking.
Yeah. It's whacked out. Getting a call from the future Foreign Minister to come help design something was amazing. An extraordinary opportunity for those people listening along, regardless of where you're looking to study in Australia. If you're an Australian citizen, you should absolutely look into the opportunities available through the New Colombo Plan at the institution that you're looking to study at. It changes from year to year, but also have a look at, actually, Arlene, you would be a perfect candidate for the NCP scholarship. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about that? Have you seen that one?
So there's sort of, because I know that there's sort of NCP mobility programs, it's NCP
the scholarship, the 18 months.
So that's what I was actually wanting to add. The NCP has so many different opportunities that you can apply for. So I just did a study trip, but it can extend for up to 18 months to 2 years, I believe. You can do, I know people who have done a year-long exchange and 2 internships, or they've done an internship and a 6-month language course. And it's really something that you can tailor to what your own goals are to get out of the program. So I didn't personally apply for the scholarship, so I'm not too familiar with what's involved with that. But I believe that
you're the perfect candidate. I'm just going to say it now. If you ever thought about it, you're exactly what they're looking for in a candidate. Globally oriented, smart, ambitious, involved in lots of different things. You would absolutely be a perfect candidate for it.
Thank you.
Those people listening along at home, $107,000 scholarship at time of recording, for people to spend up to 18 months, 19 months out in the Indo-Pacific region studying, interning, learning language, absorbing culture. It's literally an extraordinary opportunity, and I would encourage you to look into that as you are applying for university. Arlene, it's been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. Looking forward to reconnecting with you on the LinkedIn things. Any last thoughts? If you could give some advice to somebody who's in high school right now, trying to pick their path or trying to work out what university might suit them, or even going into final exams, what advice would you give to that person?
I think something that I really reminded myself, especially going into final exams or making decisions, is just do the best that you can with the information at hand. So the best that you can do on that day. And your best will look different every day. But if you just always do the best you can that day, then things will tend to work out for you. And as I've said, making decisions based on your values and what's important for you and how you want your life to look one day, as opposed to making decisions for external validation or because you think it's what you should be doing or it's what your friends are doing. I think it's really important to remember that it's your responsibility to advocate for yourself and to consider your priorities and what you want to achieve, what you want to get out of university. So your priorities might look different to your friends' priorities or your parents' priorities or your siblings' priorities. And it's always good to ask for advice, but I would caution high school students or university students against prioritizing other people's advice over what they know to be true and what they know they will like doing.
Couldn't agree more. Arlene Janse van Rensburg, thanks for joining me on the Choosing Your Uni podcast.
Thank you for having me.
At Choosing Your Uni, our mission is to make finding your ideal institution and your degree fun, easy and stress-free. So if you're looking to save some time, to discover more and to get personalised advice for every step of your journey, check out choosingyouruni.com. Our theme music is composed by Pasha Shogi and his band Flow, and this episode has been researched and constructed on Garigal land in Sydney. Until next time, have yourself an awesome day.